Welcome to the Casey Catch Up, a really good one with Oskar Johansson. It was epic to talk equipment, learning to downwind foil, and board design and a bunch of other things. Wearing the Larry Foiler hat this time. I lost my Casey hat, but stoked to support Larry. If you're looking for board bags or any sort of apparel, definitely go check him out. But yeah, just wanted to give a little intro. Oscar's a frother, and thank everyone for tuning in to listen. And even here in Sydney and reports from over in Perth, the downwind foil froth is growing, and I like to think I've contributed to that a little bit. So thank you everyone for listening along, and stoked to see the community grow. For those that are just getting into it, definitely send me a message if you need any advice. And I'd love to have you join the Coach Casey Club, and it's a growing community where we're literally just frothing every Tuesday, talking about the runs we've done and the progress that we've made or haven't made. And it's been really cool to see everyone starting on that and then graduating from it. And there's no stress once you've got the skills. I don't want you to stay on. I want you to get out there and do it and sort of share the froth. So just thought I'd do a little self plug. Go check out the Coach Casey Club, and if you don't, thanks for listening along to this, because it's been a fun little podcast series for me. And let's get into the chat with Oskar. All right, welcome to the Casey Catch Up. We've got Oskar, and I'm frothing to dig into this one because Oskar's I'm not sure if anyone has seen, but he does these awesome reviews of wings while foiling, and I hadn't seen them until about 2 months ago, and Zane, a mate of mine, had spoken about you and your froth levels, and then you did a downwinder with him in Jarvis Bay, and that you first go, you were up and going, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk to this guy, because Oskar doesn't have a lot of SUP experience, has a lot of prone foiling experience. He's very good. But yeah, so welcome to the show, Oskar. We're going to get into a lot of things, but stoked to have you on.
Awesome to be here, man. Can't wait to dive in, learn more. I've got so much to learn. I'm at the beginning of my journey, but yeah, this podcast is where it started for me. I just started listening to this podcast, everything that I know about downwind foiling and what I've helped to get me into it come from this. So
stoked.
This is awesome.
That's the beauty of it. That's, I guess, that we were saying before we started recording, but I'm doing this to get more people into the sport. Downwind foiling it's a niche, but I see it as the pinnacle of foiling, because it's so hard, but when you get it, it's the most rewarding thing in the world. So we're just talking equipment, but I want to talk about that Jarvis Bay run you did with Zane, and maybe give us a little bit of a background of your experience and getting into, I guess, the SUP downwinding foiling you've been doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess at the start of COVID, got into foiling and met Zane along the way. And at that time, he was riding for GoFoil. And just at that time, the GL wings were the first wings that came out that really, they're kind of just pump wings. They things could go forever, and kind of really unlocking that sort of downwinding side. But for me, it was you do a few little prone downwinders. We have a couple headlands that stick out, and just doing little runs here and there, but it never really clicked with doing big downwind runs, especially on prone.
Yeah.
And I sort of like everyone, I think you do a little bit of research. You see guys when you guys are doing Molokai to Wahoo, you see Kai Lenny, all that sort of stuff. These guys are riding, once you've ridden wings and you realize what they're riding to having to paddle up, they're big wings, they're slow. And I was like, I don't want to ride that. I didn't get it. I was like, I'd rather ride prone, pump out, and ride down the wind line on something quicker and smaller. And yeah, the SUP side never really clicked. And then it was the Armstrong 1325 that came out. And that was the first wing where it was like, this thing's big enough that I reckon I could paddle it up.
Yeah.
And also have fun while I'm out there. And at that stage, I'd never ridden a SUP.
Yeah, wow.
So I never paddled one. And that kind of started that journey, which was, it's probably a month of just obsession. It was just flat out, just I guess, we did it. So buddy of mine around the corner, we just paddled out. He's got a SUP, it's a short one, a 510 Amos SUP.
Yeah.
And we were just all right, can't be that hard. Like, let's put on like we put on the 1850, the Armstrong 1850, and we're like, let's just go downwind. Like, we took the ski out and we're just going to rotate between us. And we got to the boat ramp and he took 2 paddles and was facing the other way. And like, we realized like we can't even paddle straight. Like, we have no, and we just went like, nah, this isn't going to work. So, and that's when I kind of started. I borrowed his board, started paddling around in the flat water, just learning to just paddle straight. Like, it's harder than you think. You're paddling on one side, the board wants to go the other way.
Yeah.
So it was learn that side of things, and it was just like, and more just a muscle memory, like
and
learn the stroke to go straight.
Yeah, and on that, like, so many people experience this, like, man, SUP is so hard to learn.
Yeah.
But I was always telling people, like, just wait, you've just learned to foil. Like, SUP is so easy. It's such a, like, there's a lot of people that have no idea about the ocean that's SUP, and that's like sort of given a lot of SUPs a bad name. But you give someone like yourself or like Zane or, you can learn it in, like, if you put the time in and you sort of get over, it's definitely, I think it's a bit of an ego thing, just like learn how to SUP and you will pick up this downwind thing really quickly. Foiling, the learning curve on foiling is like the steepest thing in the world. And SUP is like, man, like people learn to SUP like in a day, and the skills for sure, like you gotta learn to paddle straight and all that sort of stuff. And like I teach people that like have never been in the ocean and they'll come down to the lake and I'm getting them to do stand the tail, doing full 360s, paddling on one side for 30 strokes, the other side for 30 strokes. And it's like SUP is like, it isn't easy, especially the little foil boards that you want to start on. But even just learning on a big learner board, just do one session on one of those and learn the skills you think you're going to need. And it's going to take so much time off your progression curve if you want to learn to SUP downwind. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of kept going. I was just like, all right. And it was probably one session time. I think I spent 2 to 3 sessions on flat water. And I was like, first session was like, all right, now I'm starting to go straight. So you're like, all right, learn how to put some power down, quick little strokes, things like that. I was watching heaps of Jeremy Riggs and stuff.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Guys,
I
still have no idea how he paddles up the way he does on flat water. That guy is a machine.
His power to weight is ridiculously good. He's like, what does he weigh? He's like 65 kilos, I reckon. But he's like, he's done Molokai to Oahu and, or Maui to Molokai and all the races. And he's a very good paddler. Like, you can't underestimate that. And he's using really good gear for what he's doing too. And he's, he's pretty into it. I love his drills. They all make a lot of sense. And I think if everyone hasn't watched Jeremy's, his latest one with a bunch of drills, really good. Give that a watch.
Yeah. Oh, I learned so much from what he does with his little scoop, all that sort of stuff. It really helps, all that sort of stuff. So, and that's the thing. Yeah, like we said, look, I don't want to. SUP is a bit quicker to learn than foiling. Like, foiling takes some time, and you just got to get that muscle memory for that each little step. So for me, it was like learn to paddle straight, learn to put some power down, then transition that into the ocean. Learn with waves around, like.
The
even
lumpiness.
just stand, you're not reading the ocean the same way. You're up top, whereas not like when you're prone, you're down low. You see the lump. It's a whole different perspective. Like paddling for me, I was looking down. I'm like, the wave, the crest of the wave is behind me, but you're starting to lift down on the low, and like I was like, but I should be. It lifted me earlier than I thought. There's all that sort of stuff, but just you need to spend a session, just getting your timing when the wave lifts you, and then
that's like, exactly right. Like it sounds to me like you did it exactly the right way. Flat water, nail the skills, power, paddling straight, stability. Ocean, nail the skills. Power, paddling straight, understanding where the bumps are, understanding where the downhill is, and then sorry, keep going. I love it.
No, that's it. And then then it was. I think the next probably harder bit was learn the transition from the board catching the wave to getting on foil, which unlike prone, you pop up and you get into your feet, and that's usually you hope that's your position where you want to be. But with SUP, like, your positioning may not be where you want to be when you're on foil, like from where the board floats. And that was like dialing in all of that. I know I saw on your last Instagram you had the track mounts that you can slide it further forward. And it's like at that time I was learning on by that stage, I think it was an aviator. It was an aviator. One of the
Yeah.
6.4s.
Actually, I've got a photo of it compared to the new one, the downwind version. But yeah, so you can see how sort of shorter and wider it is.
Yeah.
And like these were designed for sort of 2 years ago, and that downwind stuff wasn't popular enough for us to warrant creating a specific downwind one like this one, which is just literally getting tested. And there's a few in Sydney and a few in Perth at the moment. But yeah, you can see the difference in shape, all round versus downwind. And, it's just like, stability versus speed, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where, I mean, even looking at that board's got so many things already going for it that I would have changed going into downwind. And I think, it looks nice, I have to say. Are they going into production? Are we allowed to? Are they going into
we can talk about this stuff. Sonova does it their own way. They're like, we'll they've done a couple for myself and Marcus and a few guys in WA, Nathan and Mick, and I'll pull them up. And then I'm mates with all the shops, but like WSS Boards, Sam at WSS Boards, and Marcus does the ordering for Stand Up Surf Shop in WA, which is convenient because he also shapes boards. So he's like, we'll just order a bunch of these in. So he knows what's going to sell too. But basically, the dimensions, this one's a 6.4 by 24, and it's like 99 liters. And then the next one, 6.7 by 25 at about 115, and then 6.10 by 26 by 130. And that's obviously like, most prone guys are going to want to be on the 6.4 to start with. But if you're a bigger dude and, you're weighing close to 100 kilos, you're not going to want to be on a board that is sinking. So the 6.10 is kind of, give yourself an extra 30 liters. You're going to give it a good red hot crack is your best opportunity. And then obviously the 6.7s for those that in between. But and that's it. Like the ones, like I learned on the, so I was on the 6.4 by 28 or 29 wide, and 115 liters. Yeah, that width is just a handbrake. And we know that from like, I've done a lot of SUP racing, and the width, like guys are riding like 20 inch wide boards, and they're so much faster than a 21 or a 22. Straight, like 1 inch makes a huge difference. So for us on a shorter board and trying to just get sprinting to get going, the width is everything. And like, for a production board, I think 24 is like, I'm using currently on a 6.0 by 24. I've ordered a 6.1 by 22 and a half just to sort of see how narrow we get. And I've heard of guys going, I don't know, the climber boards are super narrow, but I know guys have ordered customs that are like 19 inches, like 6.2 by 19. And because I can already get up on a 6 by 24, I'm kind of like, look, it's going to be already better, 22 and a half. And I don't want to jump straight to 19 or 20, so I'm going to sort of baby step down towards that. But for me, there is the risk that you lose your stability. So you're talking about the power, being able to put the power down with like stability. If you're on too narrow a board or too short, if you're on too narrow a board, basically, or too short, I find is you don't have that ability to put the power down.
Exactly.
But if you go too wide, the disadvantage is you can get the power down, but you can never get the speed. So it's this, and shorter to me, shorter is definitely, it's like obviously for foilers, everyone's riding like, 4 foot boards, maybe some 3 footers, some 5 foot, but like, 6.4, man, that's long, But the advantage you can get from length is stability, but also you get a little bit extra speed. So that's what I recommend, like for crew that are learning, like the reason these are 6.4, 6.7 and 6.10 is because you'll be getting so much more stability out of that length while able to go narrower than you would ever be able to go if you were riding a 6 or a 5.10. That's the theory behind it anyway. And it's new, like we're just figuring it out. And like, obviously for production board, we want it to work for more people, but as everyone's skills get better, I can't wait for us to be riding, 5.6s by 19 and, just sort of frothing downwind on these skinny boards, but wait and see. I
mean, that's it. Like so after transitioning off the 6.4, like I think it was good. It was a perfect board that
and you're using a bigger foil too, right? So you're on the
1325.
Which is a big foil. So once you're up, like you don't need as much speed to get up, I guess is the
exactly.
point. So it's
that board was being able to put the power down and be stable was everything in the learning curve.
Like, and when you're learning, that's like perfect.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And that's where, like, if I could, yeah, sure, I could have gone smaller, but it's like that would have taken me an extra couple sessions, or I might have had a run where I just didn't get up because I just couldn't put the power down.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that now. Like, so then after that board, I shaped my own. So I shaped a 5'10.5" by 22.5.
Yeah.
I can't measure volume.
Big jump down, but yeah. And I remember I asked you about volume, but you're like, I don't know.
But I reckon 80. The tail's pretty much, it's pretty well sitting around waterline.
Yeah.
And I'm 68 kilos, 150 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, it's above where I'm at, but it's also like, I've always had that mindset. Like, I learned to foil on a 4.0 because I was just like, I don't want to buy one board, grow out of it in like a month or so, and then have to buy another one. So I was just like, I'd rather struggle for those extra sessions and then move on to the other one, move or grow into that board. So, and I'm noticing it now, like I will miss waves. Like, you'll feel the push, you'll drop down, and your balance goes off because it's narrow. Like for me, my ability, and I go to pull, and I just don't. I'm putting 70% power into that stroke, and you've only got there's 2 strokes where yes, I'm getting into this, I'm close, or just there's no.
Don't even follow up. Yeah, for sure.
And so I miss waves just because I'm off balance. Like that's the reality of, and I'm growing into that board. I'm getting more stable with it, but it's definitely a limiter. And like if you're learning, depends on everyone learns at different rates. Depends what equipment you have around you, what's available. But like if you can, borrow a board, whatever, something wider. Yeah. It is easier. You can put, and that's where like everyone goes, the narrow is faster. It's like, well, if you're putting 70% power down on a 22 wide versus 100% power down on a 26, well, you're probably going to get up easier on the 26 anyway.
Yeah. And it also, like, I guess you mentioned it, are you still using the 1325 downwind?
I am on light days.
Yeah.
So I can get it up 8 to 10 knots now.
Yep.
And it's just easy. It's just one of those, like, and that's the thing, like down where I'm, like, where like New South Wales South Coast, there's no one else downwinding. So I'm often by myself. So I'm like, I'm new to it. My confidence isn't there fully to go, I can just get up anywhere. I know I'm not a strong paddler. So I'm like, I'm sizing up my foils when I don't need to be. And it's just more the comfort and just having that safety sort of factor. So I am on the way down. Sure.
Yeah. And like, that's, I guess, very wise. And that's, I guess, in my course, like I say, like, use the biggest foil you can get up on. And like for the light days, like 8 to 10 knots, if you can get up and you're gliding, and you might be using a bigger foil, but you'll actually, you're going to have more fun on the bigger foil anyway. I actually just tested some foils today. We'll go into it later, but I used some smaller foils and I knew they were going to be too small, but I wanted to see if I can get them up. And it was hard to get up. Once I got up, I was going too fast. Like I actually had to pump most of the way down the coast. They were like, I reckon I got like for a 8K run, I did 2 8K runs testing these 2 foils, and I reckon I glided, the whole 20 minutes each run pretty much, and the glide I got for each of those runs total was maybe 2 minutes. And the rest of the time's like just chasing swells because I'm overtaking all the wind chops. That on a big foil I could just be surfing, like just turning and enjoying it. And the other thing is, on a fast foil, the run took 20 minutes. On a slow foil, it could take 25, 30 minutes. So you're getting another 30% surf time, and you're pumping less. So it's, there's a lot to like about big foils. And when you tune into them for light conditions, you're going to get more out of it too.
Yeah. And that's it. That's what I think, like the timing of when I got into downwinding was perfect. Like, you look at what guys had to struggle through to get into downwinding 6 months to a year ago. It was like, man, they were grinding. Guys were paddling 5, 6Ks down the coast, just going not even close, and riding huge foils, all this. Whereas now we've kind of got some of these bigger high aspects out there. They're plenty enough lift to get them up. But once you're up, the glide, like what you said, you can ride a bigger, I think as well, guys on this podcast tend to be the elites. And you can tell, like, everyone talks in minutes per kilometer, or things like everyone. You can tell everyone's mindset is speed, and everyone's going Molokai to Oahu. Like, that's everyone's focus. No one will say it. Everyone's going, I want to get downwind as fast as possible. Whereas
Well,
I'm
yeah.
just like, I'm just want to go downwind, and I'm like, ride a big foil and just like
Mm.
carve, like, you know, I can ride a small foil and I'm staying with it, just overtaking, you know, moving through the lumps. Or you can just like on a big one, kick off and just like surf your way, zigzag, find bumps and like find the rhythm and just have fun. And that's what, like, you know, there is an obsession with getting up on a smaller foil, but like, if you got a wing that's quick enough to still ride the bumps, like a bigger high aspect, but then you
Yeah.
can just surf the whole way. Like,
The other thing worth
look at that.
mentioning with this is a lot of the time, in my course, I talk about being overfoiled, being underfoiled, and then being just right. And
Yeah.
pretty much, personally, I every day of the week prefer to be overfoiled than underfoiled. Reason
Yeah.
being, you can tap into the energy if you're overfoiled, and you can always pull off. Underfoiled, like I did today, you're pumping down the coast the whole way, and if you get one swell, it's like, and then you got to pump again. Whereas, you know, and obviously, when you get your condition, when you understand the conditions better, you're going to get that just right more often and less of that over. But I guess the advantage of being overfoiled, especially when you're learning, is one, you're getting up, and there's nothing worse than doing a run and not getting up at all. A waste of a car shuttle, waste of energy. And the other, there's nothing slower than like a 6'6" or 6 foot foil board that doesn't ever get on foil. You use the biggest foil in the world. Like I've used this example before, but I did a race back in probably 2018 or maybe in 2017 on a Maliko 280, and it was a race down in Victoria. It's called the Fairhaven Classic, mainly a sup and ski race. But I asked the organisers, "If I foil?" They're like, "Yeah, we'd love you to come." So I did the race, and it was a beach, or sort of just 50 meters out from the beach, out along the point at Lawn, and then down to Fairhaven. And it was probably a 800 meter out to the wind line and then down. And the Maliko 280, like I could flat water pump it. So I just literally pumped up at the start. A jet ski went past. So I got on the jet skis wash, which wasn't massive, but it was enough for the Maliko 280. And there was a dash for cash to the first marker. And I beat all the skis, every single one of the skis, which is the surf skis. They're the fastest craft, paddle craft anyway.
Yeah.
And I beat all the skis to the mark, flat water pumping, and they were spewing because it was like $100 for the thing at the line, and they're all blowing up. And then I stop, and I'm like just buggered because I'm just flat water forward 800 meters, and all the skis go past me, and I'm just sort of tapping out to sea, and I'm probably giving them, not only time but distance. And I look at my watch and I go, it's been 5 minutes. I should try to get up again because I want to see if I can beat these skis. I get up on the foil, and the bumps are tiny. Get up on the foil, and I just start mowing down all these skis. I get to the first and second guy, and I go past them like, you, just like hooting and hollering, and they're just like, and I go past them on the Maliko 280. Like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean?
How big? I've heard everyone talks about, because everyone goes, I mean, Jeremy, you guys, Zane's mentioned it too. Like, how do we know how big? Because I know the numbers they're not square inches or anything. Do we know how big that 280 is?
I'm going to look it up now, because I know Dylan from GoFall's got all the, if you're ever looking for the numbers for GoFall, they're not a complete mystery. Dylan's GoFall Australia's, so Maliko 280 projected surface area is 2460.
Oh.
Yeah,
right.
But you can't underestimate the the thickness of the thing. And the thing pretty much floats, like it's a large foil. And anyway, the point of that story is, you think you're going slow on your 1800 or 2000 square centimeter foil, mate. Try paddling a surf ski. Like foiling is so fast. You know what I mean? And the slowest foil, like the Maliko 280, I don't think anyone's made one bigger, but the Maliko 280 to me is probably the slowest foil out there, and it is still faster than the next fastest craft.
100%.
Which, how crazy is that? Like that to me was like, I couldn't believe it. Like honestly, I'm like, I'll use the Maliko 280 just so I can finish, but I'm probably gonna get beaten by the skis, and then I smoked them. Like it was stupid. And not even ideal conditions. So my point of that, I think, little story
when you're learning to foil, like, or you're looking at it, you're just watching those big lumps go under you, and it's frustrating. Like you'll spend the whole time you'll just go bum, get me into that, and it takes you a while to realize. Like, I've done runs. I think the first run I ever did was on the 1850, just with the buddy just prone with the ski, and we're just rotating every couple Ks, and it's like, like, we're like, this sucks. I can't stay with the bumps. And we
Yeah.
weren't looking for the right things. Like, you're looking for the wind lumps, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like the bigger foils, you just have to change your mindset. Stop looking at the obvious swells and feel where the wind's coming from, and then watch the little white caps just sort of jump up and just sort of little tap, like little boom, boom all over the place. And when you can tune into those little white caps, you'll find that there's all these little like half pipes everywhere.
Yeah. And that's it. You just surf. You're just going back and forth, hitting the little lumps and just cruise. Like, you don't need to. And that's where like your mindset's got to change. And you're like, everyone will do it.
Yeah.
Everyone. Like, I did the same thing. The first time I went out, jumped on a sup, I was just like, I mean, actually, yeah. So after I learned to paddle.
Yeah.
Learned to catch waves. I got comfortable. I kind of got my mast set up in a point where I was like, all right, here, if I paddle up, I'll be in like standing, floating the board. I'll be in the same position as when I want to be on foil.
Perfect. Yeah.
And that's hard. Like, that was kind of, once I dialed that in, I was like, it was right before Zane came. So right before Zane came down and we did the Jarvis run, it was about 2 days before. It was about 10 knots, 12 knots. And I just paddled. It was like straight on shore. And I was like, I'm going to paddle 2Ks out and try and just get up on the way back.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. All I had in my mind, I was like, I'd listen to this podcast, like, don't paddle for the big bumps. Like, don't do it. And like everything I heard was like, don't look back, like, look forward, feel the bumps. And I got out there, and like, I don't even know who the podcast is. One of yours said that, like, just sit. And I just got too frightened. It's like, no, get up. And I got up. Like, here's a big one. It was like, nothing happened. And I was like, no.
And I guess the best way, I think, when I spoke to Matt Costa, like, he described it really well. Like, you want your bump to be like this. So you've got this really nice, like, downhill here.
Yeah.
Whereas a swell is like this. And you're trying to catch this thing that's moving so much faster than you. Whereas a little wind chop is like this. And so it's really steep either side. And if you can, you might even miss this first one, but then another one will come by, and then you got this nice little one to go on. And it's like, okay, sweet. Whereas the swells, it'll be gone, and then it'll be like another couple of seconds, and then another one comes through, and it's just like completely like maxes you out. And actually, on this, and I'm not blaming Jacko, but Jacko posted a video of him getting up, and he literally looked behind him, got us like paddled into this swell, like timed it epic with like a little wind chop wedge, and he paddled into this swell to get going. And so many people sent me that. I'm like, oh, look at this guy getting up. I'm like, yeah, that's one way to do it. There's an easier way to do it too, though. And Jack's, he come on the podcast. He's a legend, but he's a young kid, and he's fit, and he's, probably just the way it worked out in that particular moment. That's not the easiest way to get up. Start with the wind chops is definitely.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, I kind of just went like, hey, this didn't work. And I was like, all right, look forward, just feel. And you notice, like, you just feel the board kind of lifts, not when you catch like just the swell lines, and you don't get any push, it just goes under you, and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas then you feel these little, you can barely see them. It's also you just get pushed.
Yeah.
And all I had in mind, I was like, wait for the tail to drop, and that's one. And like a couple of times I looked back, I'm like, there's nothing here. Like, what? I got nothing to catch. And eventually you just trust the process. It's like, this is what they said to do. And I was like, all right, paddle hard. Like, all of a sudden I was like, this thing just like in the trough behind just formed. And it was just like, that was it. Speed.
And it, like, there's two things that are happening. One, you got the peak, the little wind chop peak pushing you, but you're also dropping into that downhill. Is you can't underestimate the downhill, because it could be an epic peak, but if it doubles up and it's sort of like a flat top, you get no chance of getting in when you get that big, deep, like that's what you get in on. Yeah, like gutter or trough. You don't even have to be going that quick, because there's all this room underneath the board. So you just literally do a pump and you're up. And that's kind of So
that's it. And then after that, I got up for milliseconds. I think maybe twice. It was like, it wasn't windy, big board, and I was like, it was encouraging. So I was like, I got up, I got on for maybe 2 or 3 times.
And this is on the 6'4" aviator. Yeah, it's pretty wide. Yeah.
And that was probably the one thing that I learned later was more when I catch a wave, or when I learned with the SUP, is you wait for the wave to push you. And once the wave pushes you, then you just I just put the paddle aside and just focus on getting on foil, pumping, all that.
Yeah.
But when you're out in the down, you got to learn to keep paddling when you're sort of half on foil. You might be dropping in and out. And I didn't have that. And Zane, when we did our first run in Jarvis, so Jarvis Bay is is like a lake, we were full offshore, straight out.
Yeah.
And they're, super tight little bumps, heaps
Mhm.
easier than when you're out in the ocean.
And that's for those people that are learning, bay runs, lake runs, harbor runs, perfect. The best way to learn, because everything's so clean and lined up. And I sort of liken it to, it's a green run on, you go to the snow, you got your green, your blue, and your black diamond. Like the green is your bay runs. The blue is like your ocean when there's only wind and small swell running the same direction. And your black diamonds, your wind with the swell going the opposite direction. And as you progress, the groomers, like, they're still fun and you're going to be able to turn hard, but you don't get the same kicks out of the stuff you do in the ocean, where you got the wedges and the A-frames and the swell coming the opposite direction. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. But it's all epic, but learning, you want to start in the green.
Yeah. And it's so obvious, like the push you get, the one behind, like, it's such clean lines. Being able to read it, work out which ones to paddle for was so much, like, out in the ocean, you've got refraction, you've got swell, you've got wind, there's so much going on. Yeah. And it's hard to find that rhythm. I think if you spent some time downwinding, whether it's prone, whatever, there is a rhythm, like, you get a little boost from a big, like the swell line, you kick off, whether it's left, right, then you jump into that wind lane, you find a rhythm. Mm-hmm. But when you're paddling, that it's not that obvious, especially when you have no experience. Like, you're just sitting there and there's just lumps everywhere. And you're like, I don't know where to go, what to paddle for.
Where do I start?
The bay run was just like little lines all going one way.
Yeah. And it's literally like it just goes like this all the way along. It's just like you get on one bump and you can almost stay in the same thing, what seems like, for a long time.
Yeah. So riding those, bay run was the best way to start. And Zane's your protege. He's your protege.
He was my first. He was the first guy in Sydney that I taught to downwind foil, I guess. Marcus is, I guess, my other protege, but he's like he's a WA king now. But Zane's he's done epic. From Marcus was a bit easier because he already knew how to sup, whereas Zane could sup, but like not to a level where he was going to be able to paddle up on the foil. And it's been an epic journey with Zane, for sure. Yeah.
So I was just tapping into his, and that, if you've got the opportunity for someone to take you out, he was like watching what he paddles for, and him to be next to you just going, oh yeah, paddle for this, paddle for that. You get a feel for what you can catch and what you can't. And just all those little tips they'll give you along the way was super helpful. Yeah. And definitely
even just the other day I went with Zane and he was trying to, he was using the lift 120 and I was on the Axis ART 999 and we were trying to test the speed of each, and Zane had it, he had the box extenders on and he's basically just having a hard time to get going, and the 120 is a pretty small foil for Zane to get going on, or for anyone really. The bumps were good, but they weren't easy. It was really messed up, and I'm just like trying to, I'm just like sitting down, I'm like, Zane, you're going for these ones, but we need to just find this. And because basically you can always learn, and when you learn your run, you'll understand where the easy spots to get in are, then when it gets harder and when it gets easier again. And having someone that knows the run really well, so good. You just like little tips and advice. It's like just try this bit here or that bit there, and if once you get here, don't bother. You almost better off going back or just keep going downwind to this next spot, because there's little chip, you get your chip in for the guys doing prone downwinders. It's kind of the same for the sup, but you can get up anywhere. But when you're using a smaller foil, there's sections that are harder or easier. And when you understand your local run, it's for sure. But
that's it. Like where we are, we've got a lot of outcrops, bommies and islands, and your downwind runs, you're kind of weaving in and out, and you paddle out here, although you're still half a K out from an island, the swell stacks, it slows down, it stacks and kind of bends around, and that point there's a little bit easier. Those bigger swell lines are tight, things stand up a little bit more, and so you can get in there, and then after that you've got a long, you're K and a half off the shore, and it's it's harder through there. And so also, little things like that.
Like here in Sydney, we got heaps of headlands, and every time you approach a headland, you get all this backwash. So that adds this extra bit of swell into the mix. So it gets even more complicated and harder to find those little, steep chip ins, like the easy ones to get on, and hard to balance. As soon as you get past that headland, downwind of that headland, it gets clean and nice and easy,
Yeah.
And if you get too far past it and sort of go too far into shore of it, it gets too clean, and then you can't get up because the bumps are too small. So it's like this, you always
and you learn that. You got to learn that. Like the refraction was one big one. That one threw me so, like I could get up, and I was even like on foil, and all of a sudden it was just like you're in this just like everything was bouncing. I could just like, you've got your rhythm, you're kind of going swell line, wind line, and you just kind of zigzagging, moving through, and then all of a sudden you don't know which bump's gone. There's bumps coming at you. It's just like you lost rhythm. You end up like, I just end up pumping half of it and just like trying to find anything. And there's lumps you can't see, just like.
And so with the backwash, one thing I've been playing around with, and obviously if it's coming straight at you and going upwind, it's not much good. But if it's coming sort of side on or sort of side, see how you go, like using them to sort of get like further out to sea. And I've done it a lot. I've done a couple of runs from Palm Beach around Bangali Headland and then into Coleroy, and it's the first 3K is that it's almost like you have to go 45 degrees to the wind and you get close to this headland, and as you get close to the headland you want to get wide, but you're actually better off being close because you can literally ride a backwash out to where you need to be. So it's kind of it's tricky, but it's tap into it's amazing what you can tap into basically. Oh, and the smallest, you'll be surprised what you can ride. And that's the other thing, is there's a lot of feel that comes from downwinding that I didn't expect. So there's energy that you can't necessarily see. You can't really read it as well, but you can feel it. And like having that, you got to be, and that's the other thing, I guess, with getting into foiling or getting into downwind foiling, is that you need to be a decent foiler already. And that's, being able to relax and just kind of feel what the foil's doing helps heaps. You can find energy where you can't see it. And that's sort of being able to trust that. I think that probably came from when after like listening on, look for, trust the bump, wait for the one behind, and like things like that. Like just trust it, like feel it, like actually get out there. Like you got to spend time, just sit on a board out there. And you feel little things. That's one of the things I tell people, like just literally paddle out to where people are taking off from their downwind runs and just sit there and like just mind surf the bumps they're going past. And I even like today when I was struggling to get up on this smaller foil, and I was like, I just sat down, I just mind surfed a couple of bumps that went past. I'm like, hey, that one I'd get up on, that one I wouldn't, that one I wouldn't. And then you sort of understand, one, you're getting your eye in and understanding what you're looking for. And sometimes they're a little bit too far away, left or right, further downwind or further upwind. And forget the ones upwind, forget the ones too far downwind. Just focus in on your little zone just in front of your nose. And when you get that, you just find that little downhill. Sometimes you go one, it disappears, next one disappears, and the third one, sometimes, the last one of the set just sort of, it's amazing. Like it's I explained to my mates, like they don't understand what I'm doing. Like, what do you do out there? I'm like, it's like mountain biking, but every time the trail's different. You know what I mean? It's literally you're getting these, like you're banking off all this stuff, and so much fun. I want to go back to, so you went with Zane on that run in Jarvis Bay, and it's the conveyor belt run. And as I said before, best way to learn, easy, and then we'll sort of go into the progression. But so tell us on that first run, when it all clicked, what was the trick?
Oh, I think so. The first thing that was really hard was I had the mast too far. Like I had an Armstrong setup on the Aviator, which obviously board was designed by you for the GoFoil, and it's just like
2 years ago too.
And I just can't get it far enough forward. So where I had to, where I'm standing on it to kind of float the board, I want to be like 15 to 20 centimeters further back once I get on foil. So I'd, paddle in, and then all of a sudden I'd get up, and then I was just like so far forward. And I think so, that was a bit of a learning curve, but the main thing was, so when you're paddling hard, I guess, so that was a whiteboard, super hard strokes. I'm trying to remember back to that run. There was one thing that like absolutely clicked for me. And I remember just being like, that was it. Like, that's the kind of trick.
What you're explaining now, like, I guess the problem with, these newer age foils, like the Lift and the Armstrong, is that basically you have to move your mast further forward for them to work. And the the board design isn't keeping up with the foil design, essentially.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So like everyone says, oh, everyone using the lift and the Armstrong stuff. And who else is really far forward? Trying to think what other brands. But anyway, those two are the obvious ones to me.
Uni I found is real far forward.
Yeah.
Same thing, Signature.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically
Don't know Takuma.
Yeah, Takuma's it's pretty front-footed, so I guess it's more like GoFoil, but I think it's somewhere in between the two. GoFoil's kind of opposite end of the spectrum. It's like to me, it's like Armstrong and lift, and then GoFoil at the other end, and it's
Axis have they've got I guess I haven't.
They're like
just the one.
They're like just like GoFoil and then Axis. I reckon they're kind of like they're both pretty front-footed. But yeah, what I was saying was paddling in, like when we paddle for speed, you've got to lean forward on your board. Simple, yeah. But if you can't get your mast far forward enough, I literally just did this afternoon. If you can't get your mast far forward enough, you have to paddle in forward.
Yeah.
But then once you have your speed, you've actually got to do one big step, which you lose speed to get that lift, and then so it's got to be a good bump. Basically, you've got to paddle in, get the board planing. What I am used to with GoFoil, I just continue leaning forward and pump, and I'll get up. With the Axis and lift stuff, if you can't get the mast far forward enough, you've got to literally paddle, keep your speed up, and then that big step back, and then like this back foot, which you're going to lose all your speed, so that's be a good bump. Back foot to get the lift, and then you're up and going. But I've been using box extenders. I actually drilled a hole in one of my mates' Armstrong mask to give you that little bit extra and all the other stuff. But it's basically it comes down to board design. Actually working with Sonova now, trying to get 14-inch boxes or 12.5-inch maybe, as long as we can get basically. And there aren't that many, obviously Armstrong have them. I think the
PPC have got some monster boxes. I don't know what they're getting.
PPC as well. Yeah, I think Chinook are where everyone's getting their boxes from, and Sonova make their own. So they're doing a new mold to make longer boxes. Yeah. I think they were doing 12.5s, and we're like, said, no, we need longer. Get as long as you can. Like, so they're going 14 now, because you don't want to buy one board and be stuck with it with only that one foil. You change brands and your board doesn't work anymore. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and that was one thing I think I was talking with his Instagram Simeon. Hawaiian guy.
Simbugi.
He said he was riding the Kalama, and he said that he's like, it's designed around GoFoil, but so he doesn't mind having it a little further back, because he said he relies on getting your planing speed.
Yeah.
So he said he found often with
it,
if you ride a board.
What foil is he using?
I think it's lift.
Yeah.
From memory.
Voyager boys are on lift. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he was saying that, he can get more planing speed, which then means when you get, like, when you kind of release, like,
he's up to
let
speed
your front
anyway.
foot go, then he's on foil and good to go. And I think it was a fair point. Like, I was like, quite often you're paddling hard, you kind of get up on foil, and if you go a bit too early, you just stall and drop back down.
Yeah.
And so there's a fine line.
He's on Oahu where the bumps are, when they go on the bumps are pretty good. Also, he's a very good outrigger paddler too, so he knows what he's looking for.
Yeah,
so
he's riding real narrow boards.
Yeah,
out.
Yeah,
they're crazy.
Speed.
Yeah. And so that's there's all that little detail, and then it's, if you're worried about your stall speed, do you shim your tail for that little bit lower stall speed, and you play with that a little bit, and that's, I think, the dialing in part. But I remember now my click moment. Zane was drilling in. Was don't stop paddling. Like you think you're like, and that's where, like, you coming from home foiling. Once the foil engages, that's where I'm like, all right, now I'm on. Like, and I just hold the paddle, and I'm just going, where do I, like, pump it, like real gentle light pumps, and I'm just focusing on it. And Zane's like, what'd you stop paddling for? Like, you had it. Yeah. And I just, and that was it. You keep paddling, even when you're half on foil, just keep hooking. And that's what clicked for me.
The only time you're paddling too much is when you hit your foil with your paddle, and that's just following through too far. So one of the things I talk about is, like, think about if this is your paddle it in, through, and then when you get to vertical, lift it up again. You're just doing this. You don't want to be following through, because then you go dong, and you're gonna stop the speed altogether. And then I bet you've hit your foil a couple of times, but I've broken paddles hitting the foil, just doing that little bit extra speed, and just like it just shakes you, because you come up your paddle. Paddle snapped. paddle blades.
Yeah, I think I haven't got a long enough stroke. I haven't hit it yet, and
That's
I
good.
only know from.
Yeah, that means you got good technique.
Oh no, it's Jeremy Riggs. He goes paddle like once you get going, short and hard. So I'm just sort of
Yeah, short and hard. Seriously,
tiny little things just to get going, and that
Yeah.
I haven't got close. And that's the other thing. Like once I'm on foil, I don't even know how to use the foil, like the paddle when I'm up. Like I haven't even tried to take a stroke while I'm on foil.
The pump and paddle.
Pump and paddle.
It's a good skill to have. Good for when conditions aren't so good, but it's not necessary.
And energy.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
and that's where I'm light, so it's a different ball game. And that's it's hard to often translate what I feel, to then heavier guys. There's a lot of guys in that 80, 85 plus that want to get into it, but it's like, what's a 68? Jacko, Mateo, all these like lights and.
I'm hoping I'm in that 80 to 85 kilo bracket. Yeah. So I'm trying to help people, but I got a few guys I'm coaching that are sort of more in that 90 plus, and an extra 5 kilos makes a big difference. Like Zane and I, like obviously both riding Go for a while, and he'd use the NL 130. He's pumping around in circles, and I'm like, I can't do that in the NL 130. I'm like, how much do you weigh? He's like, I don't know, 72. I'm like, oh, no wonder you're like 8-9 kilos on you, and and like can just get it, but like obviously he's pumping, like he's linking and like crazy, man. It's because like, dude, you'll be able to downwind easy, but But I guess the bigger guys got to understand that and think, okay, if Oscar's using the 1325, what can I use that's equivalent to that for my weight? And you know what I mean? And it's if you think about it that way, obviously, I'm not going as fast, but this is one thing to think about. If say, Oscar, you and I are both using the 1325 for downwinding, same board, everything else is the same, but my weight is what it is, 83, and you're 65, then if the conditions are good, I will go faster, regardless. But if conditions are light, you will go faster. Like based on if we have the exact same, if we're doing the same thing. So it's guys talk about like Molokai is obviously the race everyone wants to do, but for downwind, it's like, it's a light guy's game because, it's the start and the finish, but a big guy can probably make up a lot of ground in that middle 40 Ks. If they limit their losses at the start, and they can probably make up a lot in the middle if it's big enough, if it's windy enough, for races, it's interesting. Like, I
mean, we're moving into a weird time now where, I think prior, like, I guess, I don't know what guys rode when the last Malik Oahu ran. But you'd see, there wasn't a big range of wings.
They were secret foils.
They weren't out at times.
Kai Lenny and the Spencer boys, and
it
was stuff that no one there was pillowcases used over in Maui, like this Jeffrey and Finn Spence had like pillowcases, and Kai would cover his up and in his truck, and you would never see it unless you were in the water with him and like, what do you got under there, mate? But I think it's becoming more open. I hope it does. It's only going to make foiling better. I think we're starting to see, like, when does Molokai to Oahu run? July, right? July. You can tell people are starting to sort of tune that. People are getting a little secretive, and you're like, you're not seeing boards. People aren't paddling. They're just sort of like off by themselves. What are you working on? And like, everyone. And I mean, you'd like to see that, like, afterwards, maybe you have a run up of 4 months where everyone's just going, really working with whoever their sponsors are to really design whatever, really refine something for that race. You hope afterwards everyone's goes, cool, this is what I was riding, and everyone shares it around. Like, and you can't hide it that well. You see stuff, and obviously, like, seeing it's not as good as, like, I want to compare it against what I'm using and put it on top of each other. But there's I hope it becomes, like, use Formula One for an example. There's the secretive before the season starts, but then when everything starts, it's open slab. Oh, you're using that, and that's why you're so fast. Or you're using this. That's what, and like you saw in, I think last year, what was it? One of the brands copied the Mercedes pretty much and just had it. It was a pink Mercedes. You know what I mean? It was like they didn't copy it. They obviously changed like 5%, but they took inspiration from that, and now they're in the race. And that's, to me, that's great. Like, that's progress.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I hope we can get everything to a point where it's like, yeah, be secretive in the month or in your development in the lead up to the race starting. But once it's over, let's share and collaborate and
Yeah.
try to make everything quicker for the next year.
And that's it. Like brands, I guess now we are sort of moving into this new high aspect realm. Everyone's going
Yeah.
like originally we kind of went into it and went like high aspect, like, yeah, they pump, glide, but like they don't turn. It's like all of a sudden we're now like, I think the Lift 120 was probably the first wing that was a game-changing wing.
Yeah.
And like
definitely.
Everyone looked at the numbers on that and was like, yeah,
no way.
Someone like me, 68 kilo kid, he'll be able to ride that. It's like,
yeah,
all of a sudden there's 90 kilo guys doing 3-for-1s. And it's like, all right, like this turns as well. Like,
yeah,
it's the same as I think when you look at, either the new the Armstrong and then the new Axis line. They're two wings that I've spent a lot of brands that I've spent a lot of time on.
Because I've used a fair bit of the Lift, Axis and Armstrong stuff in the last month, I guess. And it's been epic testing stuff because it's the last 6 months. I feel like foiling has come a long way in terms of design, foil design. So what do you find with, I guess, the Armstrong and Axis stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Who came out? Yeah, it was after the Lift 120. I never got to ride initially. I just heard and everyone was going, this is nuts. And I think after that, the Armstrong, the HA 1125 came out.
Mm-hmm.
And on paper, after sort of seeing the Lift, I was like, this thing's huge. Like, not quite where I was going. Still managed to kind of get one and have a go on it. And I was like, the pump and glide is just ridiculous. It's such an efficient wing and it deals with speed so well.
Mm-hmm.
So for downwinding, it has a very high stall speed, which I think the Lift probably, I think if you compare the three, say the Lift 120 compares pretty well with the ART, the 899.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then same the 925 from Armstrong.
Yeah, I sort of thought the 725.
Oh yeah.
Although I just like I've just played around with it, and I in the surf, the 725 to me felt pretty similar to the 120, but the stall speed was much higher.
Yeah.
It must be a little bit small. It felt a bit smaller than the 120 for sure.
Yeah. I think definitely the 120's got that a slightly lower stall speed.
The 120 is a big wing in a small wing's body. You know what I mean? Like it's got a lot of lift and it goes super fast. But I was chatting to Zane about it today, and when you're turning, like I'm 83 kilos and I've maxed out the Lift 120 in 2 to 3 foot waves. You know what I mean? Like doing turns, like just blown up because I was going too quick. Like just turning hard, and I was like, wow. You look for something. Like I was looking for something smaller, but you look at it, it's like, how can you want something smaller than that? Like you're a big dude and you're getting, but it's crazy. It's amazing the amount of lift they've gotten out of that foil.
Yeah. And it kept going like that. It was like your 925 came out and I was like, oh, this thing turns well. And that was kind of that was the 925 was the first wing where I was like, okay, there's a future with these wings. Like it's not just for downwinding or
they're not
pumping.
Just pumping wings.
Yeah. And that was all of a sudden, it was like, okay, these are starting to click. Then then after that, it was just constantly, it was like, it was a bit, there's always an adapt, like it takes you time to dial in a wing. And I think especially the high aspects coming off, and the first foil I ever owned was the Armstrong 1250.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I was making my own wings. I was stealing Zane's wings and I was tracing out the GL 140, the 180 and trying to make them myself. And it didn't go. I got what I wanted out of it, but
a lot of work.
Jumped on the Armstrong 1250 and loved it. It didn't breach well. Like, I chopped the tips early days. I just drove me nuts. And then
that's I guess the Armstrong stuff to me, it seems like good at handling turbulence, but they were designed before the tip breach thing was a thing, and they just it's like it just cavitates and just it just doesn't handle it, and then I guess you got to use a long mast to stop doing that. But I had a session with Aaron from Earth Kite Surfing up in Ballina, and we were towing with it, and he's like, what do you reckon of this wing? I'm like, dude, it's good, but every time I get any tiny close to wingtip, I just fall off. And it was on a short mast. He's like, oh, you just got to use his longer mast. I'm like, but interesting, right? Like and then I guess for me, and then the NLs and the RSs and the GTs came out for GoFoil, and those things breach beautifully. The GL's not so much, but I guess that's sort of the same as the Armstrong 1250.
Yeah.
But then
the NLs. I can watch Zane as like, it's got half the wingtip out of the water,
he's
just riding through it.
Just fully riding through it. Didn't matter. And the RSs are even better with that little step. But then the lift stuff similar, because it's like it's 50-50 at the edge, and it just pops out and comes back in. And I haven't tried
I think the ARTs are the same. They got that 50-50 out on the last little bit, and they breach like
beautifully.
I've had straight breaches, like you'll be going along, come out, and by the like I was on an 86 mast, it'll recover by the time I touch back down. And I was like, I was on a wave, but still you get it back going. And they vent, like they shed air so well. So super high aspects came out, started getting smaller, and started turning. And I think that was when I haven't ridden a mid aspect since. I don't think I've been on a. I haven't ridden the 1250 since I got the 925. I'll put it that way. So.
There you go. I was chatting to, I'm in this LA Foil Club WhatsApp group, and Kane DeWild, I think it was just today, actually posted a video of him on a Saab foil, or a Saab mast anyway, and he maybe designed his own foil, and he said he called it a surf foil, and the guys in the thing were saying, check out this new surf foil, and he was just like gliding, like one pump and then gliding, turning, gliding. And I'm like, how's that a surf foil? That's so high aspect. And I guess when I wrote my courses, like my surf foil course, I sort of classified it, pump and downwind foil or surf foil as low aspect. You're not pumping, and that's a surf foil. And then your high aspect stuff, that's your downwind and gliding foil. You can surf on it, but it's not what it's optimized for. But Kane was doing what he does, ripping on this high aspect thing, and the guys are frothing on it because it's got crazy glide and he's doing crazy turns on it, which is what you're saying, like the high aspect stuff has become. And I'm like, well, that's the end of the low aspect, pretty much. Like low aspects is it? I guess the closest.
Even for learners, I'm still, the mid aspects have their place. Like I think, it is hard to get someone first up. Like, hey, what can I want to learn first time foiling. It's hard to put them on a fast, super high aspect. But at the same time, the lift profile's slow. Like it's gradual. You don't just, I remember I jumped back on, I think it was the Nash Thrust. And one of the early day foils, and like I'd paddle in and then get to my feet, it was just like boom. It was so aggressive, that lift.
So I've been
that's like, I don't know how I learned on something like that. Like I was just like, maybe something that you can paddle in, get some gradual lift would be better. Like the span is a bit more to deal with.
Definitely. I've been teaching obviously with all of the GoFoil stuff for the last 5 years, and even like stuff like the Eva or the Malika 200 or the Kai, depending on the size of the people, and you got to teach people to lean forward so much. So I just started teaching with the Kai and the Nalu almost exclusively, because there's no point having them foil before they're ready. Like if you put them on a Eva or Malika 200, they're just going to get lift and then get blown up. Whereas if you whack them on a Kai or a Nalu, they'll never even get the lift. So they'll be able to make the drop, hold it, and then go. And obviously, even if it's a bigger person, but you want them to be able to like I always talk about it when I'm coaching people, but like a qualifier. I talk about people catch a wave and don't get on the foil. Like just ride the wave with the board in the water. I call it like your training wheels on. And I go, so get a qualifier, and then we can think about foiling. And so that usually takes longer than you think, because just the skill set and the wave awareness and all that sort of stuff, but getting a wave and riding it for as long as you can.
Keep the foil down.
You're still foiling. Like, you actually, like the foil moving through the water, and even if your board's still in the water, everyone wants to fly. Learn to foil. I want to learn to fly. Yes, but let's teach you to fly with the training wheels on. And I call it with the training wheels, because you get your board, and that's adding stability. And you're still, the foil is still acting, but in a controlled manner. And that's I guess the trick, I guess I tell people, like for everyone listening, learn to surf foil. Don't even if you do your whole first session, you don't get any lift, don't get disheartened. You're actually doing a good job, because if you're learning and you're getting blown up all the time, you're learning zero. And that's everyone's learning.
Pull the mask back. get as
mast
little
all the way
lift as
back, and
possible.
just even just paddling out with a foil underneath your board, that's learning, because you're like, oh, how's the current? And like, we're getting
There's
into
so much more
surfboarding
going
stuff.
on.
But but
and even as a surfer, like there's a lot going on paddling into a wave, like how steep it is. You got to take the drop, all that's going on. If you're trying to learn to foil in that environment with a thing that's about to kick up, it's wild.
It's wild. Like
if you can ride through
paddling, you'll be paddling in and it's already lifting on you, and even little things like arching your back. Like you arch your back, you're shifting your weight behind you. Yeah. And that's going to give you lift. So I tell people, like, think about duck diving. Push the board down as you get to your feet. And that's going to give you more control as you get to your feet. And it's just like little things, like thinking about where you're moving your body weight. And it's the same for downwind, like we were saying, like, but with these new higher aspect wings that are really back-footed, the boards have to develop. And I guess, let's go back to talking about the Armstrong and axis and lift stuff and the go foil stuff. So what's the smallest foil you've downwinded on now? Like, are you still in the 1325 or?
Sup paddling, 1125.
Yeah, nice.
So I think my next progression will be the 999, Axis 999. I think it's got a little lower stall. It's got, I think that range of wings, that sort of foil cross section has a really early lift. Yeah,
they're easier to get going. And from what like I said, I've been testing the last month, and to me, the Axis is more similar to the go foil to me, like when you're paddling up front foot. So for the way my boards are designed, it's easier. But even in saying that, you can go slower without stalling. Like the stall speed is lower, so you can get it up earlier, basically. Whereas the lift 120, like I was saying with Zane the other day, it's a tricky foil to paddle up. And especially when your boxes aren't quite right and you're using box extenders that just add a little bit more drag, but to get them in the right spot once you're going. The 725 I paddled up this afternoon, and that it was like 10 to 15 knots, but it was swell and wind same direction. And I had been I'd surfed the Axis and done a downwind on the Axis just before. Like I want to do one more run and try the 725, and I took a while to get going. Like I know where the bumps are good, and I sort of walk out to the end of the headland, and there's a good sort of probably 500 meters before the bumps get a little bit flatter. And I had 3 goes, and my first one, I was planing, like I was going and pumping and going and pumping. And every time I, like from being on the Axis, every time I pumped, I was really front footed. So I was just stalling out, and I was too far forward on the board. But I literally went for probably on this bump, planing on my board for probably 100 meters, like a long way. And I'm like, and I had a mate who was out there interested to learn on an e-foil watching me, and he's like, I thought you were up on that one. I'm like, mate, so did I, but I just got to rewire the settings in my brain, because I've just been using Axis all morning and relearn the Armstrong stuff and shift everything back.
There's definitely with the Armstrong, I find as soon as you get it up on foil, your foot's 100% back foot, and you're just like light tap, like, because you push too hard, it just drops. Like the stall speed's high. Yeah, and I think the 725, I can confirm, it definitely feels smaller than the 120. Absolutely. From lift. But once it's up, I've just been riding with the new that one HA 195 tail. Mm-hmm. And I think the first time I was riding it prone, but the first time I pumped it, like pushed hard down. It was kind of, I'd been making my own tails before that, but this one I pushed down and I almost fell off the back. Like its projection was so much. And so they're way for thin, but just the efficiency and like the projection you get off is ridiculous. But haven't even remotely thought about start paddling that thing up. I mean, that's my go-to prone wing now. But that's why I decided to try it, because I was in the surf and there was a bit of wind, and like at Makaha, there's a few different. The southerly really is offshore, but it pushes you wider of the point, and you want to surf the North Bowl sort of in towards the wind, I guess. And I was surfing with Zane yesterday, and we were doing loops, and he was trying some lift stuff, and I was trying some Armstrong stuff, and the 725, I'm like, I feel like I can pump this thing pretty good. Like once you're up, you can like easy to, like feels like the 120 basically to me, like a very similar, smaller version of the 120 basically. And I'm like, I can paddle this up. And Zane's like, oh, it's pretty small, dude. And I'm like, I'm going to give it a crack. And man, it was hard. But once you're up, it was like, I didn't feel like I was ever going to come down once I was up. And that's the thing. Although I was
didn't want to come down because I didn't want to have to paddle it up again. It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a balance. It's always a balance. Like I think prone downwinding, I was always riding the 925 just because I had that safety buff. I know I can pump this. Anything goes wrong, I can pump out of a trough, like worst case scenario.
Yeah,
whereas
the 725, you got to be pretty.
Yeah.
If
you
focused.
miss something, you got to be pretty dialed. And that's impressive to paddle up.
And the reason I had the confidence to go paddle that up the Savo is because just before I was surfing the 799 at Makaha, same spot this morning, and I was doing a few leaps. I'm like, man, this thing, like it's only my second go on it because I've been using the 899 a fair bit. And I'm like linking waves and it's sort of offshore, like into the wind. I was pumping, I'm like, I reckon I'll be sweet pumping this, like paddling this thing up. And I paddled that up at like midday today and then did the 725 up. But the 799, looking at it, I'm like, there's no way I could paddle this thing up. And then I did, like pretty much, I think it was my third go, but like the first two bumps were kind of shitty ones. And I was just sort of trying to test the boundary of it. And then one good, like, little steep bump. And I was like, boom, up. I'm like, oh yes, game on. It was, and because it's front footed for my board, it worked really well. Whereas, and that's what I'm wondering for the 725, if I had it further forward, definitely I had to have it further forward in my board, then maybe it'd be easier, but it still felt like it was harder.
Yeah.
It was
back-footed. It's a small foil. I think I'm still impressed. You got the 799 up. The 799.
Well, I lined them up. I'm gonna. It's on my phone. I'm gonna share a photo so we can see actually, because I took a photo of each because I think I thought it was a cool thing to know. They're actually really similar size. Here it is here. Sharing screen. So it's not the best photo, but you can see.
Yeah, wow.
Like it's probably a bit more chord, but in terms of span, it's kind of the same.
Similar.
Yeah. And obviously actually the ARTs, I should have taken one of it front on. It's flatter, whereas the 725 is probably more like a dihedral, so it's like angled down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was curious and I lined them up. I'm like, well, maybe I'm biting off more than I can chew here, but I got to know the limit. I got to know the limit. Yeah.
I think it was those wings, and that was comparing the two. I think you start to realize, how important that foil section is. And, prior you could pick wings up and you're like, this thing's so thick, it's going to have a high low stall speed.
Yeah.
You kind of knew what wing's going to do, but you pick those two up and you're like, okay, these are pretty similar thicknesses.
Yeah.
A mil in it.
Yeah.
One's got a low stall speed, one's got a high stall. There's so much more to that wing design than you think. And it's not just like, oh yeah, this is the, there's so many factors that come into it.
Fully. There's a bit going on. One of the other things, I guess, in the surf, besides the front foot, back foot feel that I felt between these two, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts too. Surfing, if I just spend a day on the Armstrong stuff, get used to it, but it's a very back-footed foil. And when I'm turning, it's like similar to the lift, it's like all through the back leg, like you're finishing your turn through the back leg. So I find that's better for, I guess, more horizontal turns. I found it hard to get more vertical on it because it's like, I like the drive. And I was chatting, I called up Bennett's, who I'm trying to get in this podcast, but he's a busy man. And I was asking him about because he's been using a bunch of different foils too. And he was telling me all the different shimming he's done to make it more front foot. And he shimmed shimmed everything. He shimmed the tail wing, he shimmed the base plate. And he's 2 degrees here and half degree here. And
he rides so much tail shim, like lift. I've never ridden any, and
really draggy. I tried one of his setup, and I tried one of his 120 setup, and it felt you lower that stall speed, which for these high aspect fast wings, you lower that stall speed, and happy days. You can make it go slower. So so you can sort of cruise in the waves, whereas most of the time I just try to keep my wings neutral because that's obviously what they're designed for. Optimum, you get the widest range, but there's it makes a lot of sense to I know why he's added all the shim to the 725 now. I wish I'd done that before I went out and tried to paddle it up.
Yeah. I think I've seen Katie Meow's been making some little reverse shims. The same thing. I used the little plastic shims that come with it, like just stick it in reverse and chop off the top, and
okay, that's interesting. So for the Armstrong stuff, the shims come, and there's like the little blue ones. I haven't used them because I was just like, I'll stick with. I wanted to go understand what it was doing first and then play around.
Yeah.
So you got to flip them around there to create.
They don't fit. So normally, where it goes on at first is as much lift as you can get, and you add more and more to get less lift.
Gotcha.
But you can just flip them around and they'll stick up quite a bit. So just screw it down and either just file it nice and flush or just chop it.
Yeah.
And it sticks up a little bit, but I think it does. It starts bringing that front foot pressure on.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been playing, which probably be good to get your thoughts. I always played with moving my front foot back.
Yes, me too. That's what I've been trying to do. But I feel like it's like your board gets longer, if you're moving. Yeah.
And that's where, because I've been riding the Armstrong board, and the boxes on that
super long,
huge.
Yeah.
So you can ride it really quite far forward and then bring your front foot back, and you're not riding such a long board. It feels quite nice.
But what I found is it's still, you move the mast further forward, but it still feels back footed. Yeah. It doesn't change it. Like that's when I first tried the lift stuff. I got these box extenders from Brad Dela Cruz, and I'm like, oh, this will fix it. It'll be sweet. And I moved it, and it's like, now my feet are just further forward. Like it doesn't change how it feels. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And then going through turns. I come from a surfing background. So for me, in the critical part of the turn, I tend to be back-footed heavy. And it's like what you said, when you're going horizontal, you're leaning on your front foot a little more, but then in the pocket, I find it more natural because I lean back on it and I can really push through on my back foot.
Yeah.
So I never found the transition. Whereas, I guess, it's the opposite to what you said. You said you struggled more with the Armstrong going vertically. Because it's back-footed.
But that's, I guess, interesting. I guess it's more in the bottom turn. I guess I can't set it up as well because I got a surfing background too, but I've always been a very front-footed surfer, which probably lent myself to foiling go falls when I started, especially. But being a front-footed, so I'm getting that drive out of the front foot. But in saying that, when I first tried the lift stuff, I was in a little beach break, and the hits off the whitewater, epic, because one, the foil section, but also because you're coming out of it back-footed, you're not nose diving, I guess. Whereas on the go fall, I was going into it really front-footed, hitting the whitewater and getting more lift, and then having to push forward. But if you push forward too much, you nose dive, and not enough, you're getting launched. So that was that was when I was, just wouldn't hit whitewater on the early days because it's like, it's going to get blasted. Whereas the back-footed stuff is allowing more of that. But I'm struggling in my setup turns because I guess, I don't know, the waves the last few days have been kind of just swells, not really breaking. But I found that my favorite turn on the Armstrong stuff so far has been like the last bit of your cutback. You know what I mean? Like you're leaning on that, and it's just like get this extra speed. It's like, and you're like, there's really nice horizontal figures of 8.
And they accelerate through, and that was
accelerate.
I think I'm light, very light. Well, not very light. It lends to them when you're downwind, when you get a heap, like when you drop in and get a heap of speed, those front foot heavy foils, like I can take my back foot off. All I'm doing is keeping it down. I can feel it still going up. So I can't do anything to keep it down. Whereas,
so what's you're using? Is that like some of the bigger Axis stuff? Is that
so that's on the Axis. Downwinding, like I've only been proning downwinding those. I just got the next size up of the 999. Which is a 10, and that thing's its glide on that thing is phenomenal. And so that's but same thing, it's dropping into those bombs, whether go foil or Axis, being light, like just not being able to keep it down at speed, whereas the Armstrong I can deal with the speed better.
And so that's interesting. So for me, I actually feel like the lift or the Armstrong at high speeds, they get a little like sketchy back-footed, whereas on the Axis stuff, they just feel so solid, and I just lean forward, and obviously I'm trying to use smaller foils, but you lean forward and it just gives you more speed and like more control. Whereas when I was maxed out on the Armstrong or the lift stuff downwind, I'm leaning back, and it's like, you don't want to be leaning back for a long time, basically, because you're getting that lift and it gets this like little, like almost death wobbles, I found. Whereas the Axis, to me, feels super solid. Like it's just a solid setup downwind, and you push forward, you get more speed, and you can turn to get more speed too. And
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that Armstrong, when I ride that, that's the thing. Like, so towing, I love it because it feels twitchy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to just fast transitions from rail to rail. And I think that probably came from riding some of those bigger high aspect wings. You know, there's a lot of lag in rolling between turns.
Yeah.
You know, you're starting to move to foils that move a lot faster and they're quite pitch sensitive. So I started riding a longer mast, which same thing. You got to roll that mast over. There's a delay in it. And then you've got such a span on the wing, the whole system flexes and loads. There's a lot of delay in rolling from rail to rail. So it's always something that I focused on. I was like, I want something that can just...
On the Armstrong stuff?
Yeah, on the Armstrong. And in general, like just on larger, like those wide span wings. And it was just something that I always was like, I want something that I can quickly just, you know, roll over rail to rail. And that's what I find when you've got speed, the axis is so solid, as in it feels, you don't feel uncomfortable switching rail to rail. Yeah.
It's like you go, it will follow. And if you want to change direction, sweet, easy.
Yeah.
Whereas, for sure for me, the lift and the Armstrong probably even more for me.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to like a bunch of things, foil design, but then also the mast and the fuse. And a lot of people talked about the lift stuff being quite soft, like flexy, but I thought it was not too bad. Whereas the Armstrong stuff, I really noticed the kind of so it's just like a flex, like it's like a twang. And my first session, I'm like, whoa, this is gonna be hard to get used to. But you use it, like you use it for a whole session, and then the next session you're kind of used to it again. And then actually I went back to the axis setup, and I'm like, whoa, this thing's hard to turn, like because I was so used to getting back footed, and I was like, I feel like I couldn't get forward enough over it. It was too stiff to turn for the first wave. But it's like your brain, like sort of the gears are turning and you're recalibrating. Okay, now you understand. And it's I guess it's just that. But to me, if I had a choice, stiffer mast is got to be better than a softer mast, like a floppy, flexy mast. But to me, there were also advantages, I think, to flex if you can control it in certain spots. Like, I used the 899 the other day, and actually I didn't tighten it up enough probably, and the wing was moving just a little bit, but the mast is super stiff, and the fuse is super stiff. So when I was turning, I'd just get like a little bit of flex in that turn, and I really liked it. I'm like, oh, I might do that again. I probably won't, but like there was something in that I found. For pumping, not as good, but for the turning, like in the white water or just like at the top turn down, that little bit of play. And I was chatting to Matt Levings, used to ride Nash foils ages ago. He's more sailing now, but he had this broken tail wing. I'm mates with JB, the Nash distributor. He's got he had a broken tail wing, and they sent him a new one, and he tried it. He's like, no, I don't like it. I'm going to use back to my old one. And the flex that it had, he really liked for surfing, which super interesting, right? Like, so once you get used to, and you see like guys riding the Armstrong stuff like Mateo and Noah Flegel doing like backflips and stuff, and it's ridiculous. And even like the spins and stuff, but I kind of understand how they're doing that. Like they're using the flex to their advantage. So there's something in that. But
I mean, you can feel it through a turn. Like you can load it, and you can feel you come out, you load it, and it pulls back. It's like springs. And if you're not ready for it, like it'll buck.
Go without you.
You're done.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the 1125, when it first came out, like people were a bit half and half. They're like, I love this wing, like the pump and glide's amazing, but like took like me 4 or 5 sessions to work out how to turn the thing.
Figure out how to,
And it was just, once you sort of started to dial that in, it was just like you could load it and it would just spin back and it'll come back. And it's the same as if you're into doing airs. Like you load that, if you're going on your toe side, like you load that toe side and it's like it pops you. It just gives you a little fling at the top. And
fully.
There's nuances between all those brands. And like you said, like you got to click between them. You know, I think GoFoil are one of the stiffer setups, like full carbon setup. You know, but then
when I went up and followed with Bennett's, not recently, but probably earlier, probably almost a year ago now. And I used his unifoil stuff, and I'm like, man, this thing's flexy. And the first wave it was strange, but then a little toe foiling, and then the second or third wave it started to click. And I'm like, I understand how you're doing those turns now, like those whips and like the sort of little tweaks in the whitewater, and it's like that flex allows you to do that. Whereas a stiffer mast is like you're sort of more locked in, and it's like using a quad versus twinny.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And you can load like you have, it's kind of like I was saying, I was looking for something that could roll faster rail to rail. I kind of wanted that transition. Like when you come out of one turn, I want to be going straight into the next. But the same things when you see Adam ride, like he loads it up, but because you've got that lag time in the system kind of unloading and transitioning over, you can kind of tweak your turns a little bit. You have that little bit extra time as it unloads, and you kind of throw it that little bit further because it's kind of unloaded, and you suck it back under.
It's like a little twang, isn't it? It's like a little, and then back on, get it back under you.
And so I know like, a lot of guys like rail, they're like, flex is bad. It's it's terrible. They're like, you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I don't think it's that cut and dry. Like, I think the right amount of flex, and no matter whatever amount of flex that you're used to, epic. You can use that to your advantage. But if you're not used to the flex, I totally understand. Saying the same thing. If you're not used to the stiffness, that sucks too. I remember when GoFall came out with like their original mask was a little bit flexier, and then they brought a new one out and it was way stiffer. And it took me a couple surfs. I'm like, I didn't like it at first. It was like, oh, it's like just feels strange. And even the last couple of days going from the Armstrong to the Axis stuff, it's been like, I'd like the first wave on the stiff stuff. I'm like, I don't know about this anymore. Yeah. And then I got used to it. And then I went back to the Armstrong stuff, and I don't know about this. And it's like they're almost opposite. And it's hard actually. It takes a couple set. Like you can't just ride off. And I think for those that have nailed it, I think it's skill to be able to jump from a stiff to a flexi mask and just get it in one session.
Yeah,
but I definitely haven't got it. It takes me a couple of waves. It takes me like, at least half an hour, 40 minutes. Is like, am I wasting my time on this setup? And then at the end, it's like, oh no, that last one was a sick one.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right?
Like it's just challenges a bit. Like you start doing different things because
you're gonna
you learn. And that's where like I know so many guys have ride as much skill as you can, like do it. Like just for you to get on something, no, that's too flex. It's like work the flex out. It might change something and give you a new sort of thought path, and then you bring it back to that. And like that's how you progress and learn. And
exactly.
Ride as much as you can.
I've loved trying out all the stuff that I have over the last month because I was used GoFall for so long, and I still think the GoFall stuff is epic. But to be able to ride all this other stuff is also sick, like to be able to really tune in. Okay, this does this really well, and this one does this really well. And I still think for me, the RS 1000, I love that wing in the surf. It's kind of that mid aspect, kind of like to me, I actually think it's very similar to the Viper that Bennett's worked on. It's like this, it can pump. It's not the best. It doesn't even come close to pumping like any of the super high aspect wings, but it can pump, but it'll turn way better than this. To me, it turns way better than like the 120 or the 725. So it's kind of like, well, what do you like when you go out? I always ask you, like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, what do you like if you're buying a foil, what do you want to use it for? And I sort of feel like a surf foil almost shouldn't be what you're downwinding on. In saying that, we were just saying earlier, like the high aspect stuff is getting better and better, and you can be turning on it, but it depends what waves you're in too. Like
100%, and that's where like I think the high aspects when they first came out for me, I kind of I rode the 1125 and was like what am I going to do? Okay, turns wider, it's a lot quicker and all that, pumps well, and I was like, where I'm currently, you're kind of I was at the stage where like you're starting to do turns, you're starting to hit the white water, and then I'm like, I can't use this here. But then it was like, I can ride 200 meters further out. You chip in, and then you're just on the ocean line just carving back.
It's just
a whole different style.
And just as you said, it's just a different zone. It's another 50 meters out, and you're like, sweet. Well, now I'm using a different zone that maybe there's less people in, and you can enjoy it. That's what, to me, that's what falling is all about. Like, and that's what downwinding for me is all about. It's opening up to something that no one else is using, and it's getting all that sort of stuff dialed.
The gear's getting so good, and I think like we touched on it earlier, like I've got into it at the best time. The stage that I got into it is like perfect timing. Gear's getting good,
boards are getting narrower, boxes are, I reckon the next 6 months you'll see all designers have longer boxes, 14-inch boxes, so you can use it across all different boards.
I think that's what I've always shaped my own surfboards, and so like making my foil board, I shaped my own foil boards first, and then I got the Armstrong, which was super stiff. But it comes at a weight cost. And so then I kind of was like, all right, I listened to this podcast and everyone's going like throwing numbers. People are going down to 21, 6, 6, 4, playing with it. And I was just like, as you look around, I'm like, available. And it's like, I want to do this right now.
It's
and it's like, some people, like if you want to order a custom Sonova Aviator, I don't in months turnaround.
6 months probably at the moment. It's crazy. Like and I think it's the same for all brands. Like the demand is high. And shipping and COVID is just handbrake on everything. And while there's all this demand, like literally Sam at WSS Boards just got like I think 20 downwind specific aviators in the last, like on Tuesday, so 5 days ago, and I think there's like 2 left, and they're all the bigger sizes.
Wow.
So and he's like I'm gonna have to order some more. Like, good luck with that. Like it's I got a bunch of boards in the container too, and it was stuff I'd ordered almost 12 months ago, and it's like that's now not even worth testing, like that's redundant.
Exactly. And totally. And that's where I was like, I got to make my own. I think the only one I know, James Grundy, who's Conrad up up north, and he's starting to make a few downwind boards. So he's sort of seeing what he's been doing, taking a leaf out of Kalamas with the tail, with that sort of V tail. But he's the only one that I've even seen that I could even get onto that would be able to have a turnaround time that's remotely usable for me.
Well,
I just
everyone
ended
wants
up making
now.
my own. And, sorry,
everyone wants everything now, and it's like, well,
that's it.
And
COVID, the surf industry is just, supplies are low. I used XPS wall sheets. So it's like wall insulation sheets.
You couldn't get anything.
And just glued them all together and shaped that, and
it
works.
You might get a few orders out of this podcast, mate.
Mate, the time it took, I vacuumed full carbon back bagged it. First time I've done it, and it was just took a lot of time. But it's also rewarding. Like building your own gear is super rewarding. It's like, when you start chopping, even just with your tail, like sanding down the edges, you get rid of the hum, like things like that. You're like, you tinker and shims. It's all that sort of stuff. It's so much fun. Just dialing in your equipment.
Actually, let's go a little bit deeper on the surf stuff. I guess I was actually just chatting to Zane this Sava, and we we're talking about how the RS 1000 is compared to the 120, for example. And in terms of, like, I've actually downwinded both of those. And in terms of speeds, I've actually gone faster on the RS 1000, like for 1 kilometer, but overall the 120 felt quicker because it, like, that glide is better, obviously. On a wave, the speed can sometimes be a negative thing, I find. If you're moving too fast for the wave, then you actually have to slow yourself down. And a mate of mine, actually I was on a camp with a guy called Husey and his mate's Greeny, who's the Lift Australia distributor. And he commented, even I were on a party wave, and Greeny commented and was like, "You're making Casey look slow." And for sure, like I was on the RS 1000, he was on the 120, and he was at that, when we crossed over, he was generally going faster. But I was trying, I guess, sometimes you've got to bleed your speed to be able to do a turn. And that's one of the things with the high aspect wings, which I think will only improve. And especially if we talk about it, I think the high aspect stuff has got to be able to go slower than what it currently is. Because if you can't go slow, then you're going to go quicker than any wave is capable of, I guess, handling, so to speak, because you've got to get, because I think about, like, you got to get like out in front of the wave and then bottom turn back up at it. And on a foil, we're already going quick, it's quicker than most shortboards, unless you're on massive waves. So it's matching. Like, I feel like when I foil on like a, like, say it's a long, like 100-meter right hand point breaky kind of setup, on a foil I might get 4 turns in. If I was on a shortboard, I'd probably get 10. You know what I mean? Like, you can sort of be more rapid fire on a shortboard because your turns, you're slower. So you're closer to, like, you can kind of, whereas on a foil, I'm like, bleed the speed, bottom turn, get up, turn, hold the turn, get back down. And it's like, it's a whole different way of, I guess, like, I've got to stretch everything out a bit more on a foil because there's that speed that I've got to bleed before I can turn. Because I can't turn my foil maxed out. I just feel like I'm going to blow up. Whereas on a surfboard, you never get into those speeds, so that because they're slower, you can,
absolutely. I mean, I've been finding that, I think the 725 is such a quick foil. And now we all came from riding those big high aspects, and we're pumping way out, and so much speed and more, when you're riding those lumps, you're much more horizontal. You're just getting real powered up, wide horizontal turns.
Yeah.
And you start coming in closer with these smaller high aspects into the sort of surf zone and in the pocket. And like my bottom turns, I'm just running out straight. I'm just waiting. Like, come on, like wait. Yeah. Now I feel comfortable enough.
Almost at the stall speed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're like, okay, now I can turn. And I think it's the same with all foils, really. Like you've got to be able to, like, to do a snappy turn on a foil. I feel you've actually got to be going quite slow.
Yeah.
Because when you're maxed out, it's going to be like this big arc. Like I sort of compare like what Parko at J-Bay does, or Bells does those big, like sick arcs, like cutbacks, like sort of top turns that wrap into a cutback. Whereas you look at like John at Margs and he's doing like these hooks, and almost like snappy things. And that's like on a foil, that's a slower turn. And you watch guys like Eric from the Progression Project, he's ripping in these whitewater, like bangers.
Yeah.
But he's slowing down to do those turns. He's not going in at full speed. You've actually got to slow yourself down to be able to manage that tighter arc, which is
absolutely. And that's really, like, you watch Bennett does it well. Like you see how you watch his clips, when they're filming from the ski, he's so far out in front, like he's approaching those sections. But by the time he gets to the top, like with the surfing, he's got that time to kind of, he's kind of gone slow and he can kind of whip it under and do that little last little tweak. Whereas if you went at that full speed,
maxed
you
out,
just launch out the back.
Yeah,
like, you can't hold that speed. Yeah.
And that's it. It's and Bennett does it so well. How do you bleed that speed?
Yeah.
Stylishly to get that turn without going like, it's almost like it's all in the setup almost before your bottom turn, like straighten up and almost fade.
Yeah.
Let the wave, like get way out in front of the wave and then back up at it. And that's for my foil set. That's what I've been working a lot of, is instead of horizontal figures of 8, vertical figures of 8. And it's all in bleeding speed, I believe.
Yeah.
And if you can bleed speed, then you're going to be able to.
You can stay there. So that's where, and you sort of, the high aspects have gotten to that point where the stall speed's getting close to what you want to be at doing those style of turns. And it's sort of like, you can't go as slow as you may want.
Yeah. And
so that's where,
if we can get, like, to me, a good foil has a really wide range. And that's one of the things that I think GoFoil does really well for their, like the GLs and the new RSs. You can go pretty quick on those things. Like the 1150 goes fast, as does the RS 1000. But on the same token, the 1150 and the 1000, they go pretty slow too.
Yeah.
And so that range makes a foil really good. Whereas
that's where I think, honestly, I reckon the unifoil's delay in production could be a good thing. Like, we've all done this and gone like these crazy high aspects. So like, that's one of the probably most refined mid aspects there is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of where, whether we, I don't know, maybe that's where we're heading into the surf zone.
Yeah. And who knows? And I guess the one of the things I didn't love about, or I guess my criticisms of some of the lift stuff, is that range on their wings is pretty tight. Like the high aspect 170, like I was downwinding that, and I think Zane was on the RS 1300, and the 1150, we were pretty similar speeds. But when it was really light, like I was pumping hard, whereas he was like sort of gliding and going the same speed. So the zone that the foil works really well is actually, I guess, if you can get that zone bigger and you can go really fast and you can go really slow, happy days. But if you get that zone too tight and you're locking yourself into a certain speed, that's what I think, these small high aspect wings, people are lured, sort of like, they want to go towards. Just think twice, because you obviously try them and they're sick. Like, don't get me wrong, they're epic. It's been a huge leap in foils, but I'd love to see the range of their speed get better. And Oh man, actually, and we were talking about before, Bennett's shimming. He shims the 120 a lot and lowers that stall speed, so he gets more range out of it. He probably loses a little bit of top end, but gets that extra bit of range.
Yeah, and that's you got to dial your gear in. But I mean, I've always said it from the get go. Like, you got into foiling, like I was like mid aspect. I was like, this is mind blowing. Like, this is all I want to ride. And then it's all of a sudden this high aspect. You're like, oh, that's all I want to. Like, every time something new comes out, you're like, this is all I want to ride. And then all of a sudden you start thinking again, and you're like, oh, I could change that. And like, it keeps evolving, and like, it's a super fun sport. Like, stay in the I've never had experience with like being at the front. Like you probably had it a bit with sup racing, but like
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near the front of it, but it's still like just watching this all progress.
Oh,
And
being a
evolve.
part of the growth of it. Yeah, I guess for SUP, I only really had it for the downwind stuff. The unlimited downwind boards. It I guess it's almost extinct now because of foiling.
Yeah.
But the Marcus and I had a big part in like steering where that would go, because Sonova were backing us to say like, hey, we'll make you 2 or 3 boards a year, and just let's do 3 different versions, and we learned heaps from that. But with the foils, we're all experiencing that because the board brand or the foil brands are investing in it and really, getting new stuff out there. Like, so often. It's cool.
Yeah. I actually saw the car was parked next to me, the Savo, and that's the first time I've seen a unlimited downwind board.
Yeah.
Do you reckon we'll pull any of that into a downwind SUP foil board?
I've chatted to Marcus about it, and he had one crazy design. And I guess the thing, well, look at the Kalama already.
Yeah.
The Kalama, that's kind of like he hasn't reinvented the wheel, and that pintail is just pulled off surf skis, basically. SUPs just pulled it off surf skis or canoes, you know what I mean? And when Marcus and I were looking at designing a fast unlimited board, we're looking at outrigger canoes, looking at surf skis and taking inspiration from that. And I think, it'd be silly not to learn more. And like even I said before, that the width of a board makes so much difference. And we know that from like Marcus and I know that from design, like from racing stand-up paddle boards, but it took us, it's about like, we didn't think that we could make it usable for the masses, but as more and more people are doing it, people want the narrow boards so they can go quicker. So Marcus has already used a fair bit of his, I guess, SUP experience to sort of the nose and where the volume is and that sort of stuff. But there's more you can pull from it. Like one of the things that Ben Tarju from One played around with was like a little bit of a dugout, like a recess.
Yeah.
So they give you a little bit extra, you almost lower your center of gravity so you have a bit more stability while getting more volume. And the good thing about that, obviously, is, as I said, more stability, more volume. The bad thing is once you're up, you've got like a pool of water when you foil.
Yeah.
Whereas when you need to make the board bigger, probably drainage holes and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But like that's where it's going to go. Don't know.
That's sort of where I went with my, I guess Armstrong started that. Like I like the big dugout deck. It feels good. Yeah. But then same thing. It's you're making a bathtub. And that's where like, so mine now, I kept the back open. Like you see those sort of little boat, sailboats that have it. So I was like, hopefully it'll run out, but I haven't noticed it filling up yet, but who knows? There's so many little nuances with that you just got to, especially when you're shaping your own boards, you got to think about. And downwind boards, I mean, there's so much diversity already in the boards. Like you look at a Kalama, you look at an Aviator.
We look at the Kalama, I think that the Aviator I feel like is kind of middle ground, but you look at the Kalama versus the 52 foil co. Have you seen those boards? And they're short and they're thick, dude. Marcus, I've been trying to get Marcus to make the boards thicker, but he's like, let's just go longer and we'll get the volume there, because he doesn't like the disadvantage that we found of the thickness is you go too thick and you feel a bit disconnected from the board. But I mean, I've heard people loving the 52 foil co boards and even the Kalama boards. They're chunky, man. It's a lot of foam.
I mean, mine's thick. I'm close to 5 inches, probably a touch over. I don't remember the thickness, but there is that negative. You feel a bit disconnected. But one of the harder things that I found, especially with riding the Sonova with an Armstrong setup, where I'm like all the way forward, but the nose, when you've got a long nose, if you got a bit of a porpoise on the pump, your nose touches down. Yeah. Because I came from riding a prone board and I was just like, doesn't matter. Whereas when you've got 2 extra feet out the front, like you go down, that means that's a difference of 10 centimeters on the mast. It's like your nose is touching down.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I mean, it actually does your prone foiling wonders, your pumping wonders. Like you don't want to be doing this when you're pumping. You want to be keeping your board flat so all that energy goes into projecting forward.
Yes.
And on a SUP, you can't afford that because your nose keeps hitting down. And so that's the one negative I suppose I found with riding a longer board.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of, at the moment, I don't want to explore too much over that 6.0, 6.1 length.
Yeah.
or move the boxes forward. Like
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Or you just move the boxes forward, then you have that you're paddling, and you don't have to move that foot back. So when you're up, the tail is, well, it's just to get going, and then once you're up, you've only got so much length in front of you. So I think that's probably the key is, and this is another thing actually I got another question to ask you on the Armstrong stuff, but the box has got to be further forward, longer boxes, a little bit further forward than what they are. And I guess for me, even with the GoFoil stuff, I was using a lot of. I rarely go to the very back of the boxes, but with the Armstrong stuff, obviously I'm way forward, as far forward as I can get, and drilling holes in mast to get even further forward. Do you find the high aspect stuff compared to the lower aspect Armstrong stuff, you're moving, it's a different placement? Like, are you further back with the low aspect stuff?
So the last board that I had, so it's hard to say because I haven't jumped back on the 1250 since I've gotten the high aspects.
Yeah, right.
But on the last board I had the 1125 and the 1250, and I rode both of them at the front, like ran to the front.
Okay.
But I did find, so the high aspects, even across most brands, they tend to be more pitch sensitive.
Yeah.
Pulling them back a little bit, having that little bit extra swing weight, it smoothed out that. It made them a little bit easier to control.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I stood further back with the high aspects than I did the mid aspects.
Yeah.
Even with it forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I was, because I got a mate who I'm coaching, and he's got a 1125, I think, high aspect from Armstrong, and then he's got the 1800, I guess, lower aspect, and he had it, the 1800 today, rammed all the way to the front. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's the best thing to be doing, because I think the lower aspect stuff is probably more not GoFoil, but towards GoFoil feel. It's not whereas the high aspect stuff, because I think just as simple as the foil is less cord, it's further back. You know what I mean? So so that's cool.
Yeah, the center of mass of lift, I suppose, changes.
Yes, exactly. Because you almost, I guess, to make it, if you were to make it the same, you have to add an extra length fuse on the high aspect wing. So you've got the front of the foil being at the same spot, whereas there's your front for the high aspect and there's your front for the lower aspect, but they're both bolting on the same spot. It's just the extra cord. Yeah,
exactly. Armstrong, you have like that flange that kind of, I read what did I bolt on? I had a look at the old 2400. A friend had that, and it almost doesn't have that. The new high aspects have like the wing and the sort of that flange that sort of comes off where the mast sticks in, whereas that the front of the mast almost slided straight up to the trailer. They're playing with that, but I definitely think the high aspects in the Armstrong line anyway you ride a little bit further back.
For sure. Yeah, as in where you're standing. Yeah, and that's cool. Yeah,
or push, if you've got room, push them further forward, and that's where if you don't have that option, you've got to ride further back and
move your feet. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. It feels like my 4.6 feels like a 5.0. You know what I mean? It's like
that's it. Out in the front.
Let's start wrapping it up. I want to finish with. I always think 3 tips on. Actually, I got to before we go to 3 tips. Are you winging it all?
I am. I'm frothing on it. I was a bit late to the party with the winging.
Yeah.
I just got a couple of the Armstrong A wings.
Yeah.
And loving it. And I think it's an interesting, whether it helped me with downwinding. Yes and no. Yeah. I mean, it gets you out there and it gets you riding the lumps.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go, winging sucks downwinding. It's just in the way. And it is like, it's not the same experience. It's not as free. Like you can't get past that. You're holding a wing in front of you, and I find you can't pick the line you want. You have to either go left so you can see over the wing.
Yeah.
Like you're tracking harder side. But then like for us where we are, like we've got to run the like 12 Ks, and it's like we're just straight downwind. It's over pretty quick. Whereas with the wing, we're like go for a K, then we come for Bommy for a couple, then pipe. Like it's an adventure. You can go wherever you want. And
choose your own journey. Yeah.
And it's a whole different experience. So I'm like, yes, it's not for pure downwinding, it's not as, it gives you an experience and can get you out to that zone, but to write it off completely is like, nah, this is not at all have a play. Like you can go do other things, and it's,
yeah, no, I think
I'm loving it, but I
think
still
the wing's
suck at it.
epic. I think the wing's epic as a tool. Like, firstly for wave riding and sort of self-whipping yourself into stuff. And I was chatting to Dennis earlier, and he was saying he's finally clicked for him, and he's like, dude, it's like towing. You just tow yourself into waves. He's got the wing behind you. It's happy days. Downwind, I think I actually find winging downwind, or how I want to downwind, harder, because as you said, you got to maneuver that wing. And I've chatted to a few guys, JB again from Nash and Nash distributor, and he said he's played around it and put it literally, if he's going downwind, putting the wing behind him and almost dropping the strut in the water makes a huge difference. I know Jeremy Wilmot's been saying that. He's like, he drags it to try and keeps flapping it down. Like it goes behind him, and then you can see where you want to go. And and that totally. To me is getting closer to downwind. But I still prefer the deflate or the paddling up, and that's where I'm getting at. You probably knew the question was coming.
The deflate downwinder.
Deflate downwinder.
I haven't tried it yet.
You got the skills. I haven't tried it. You got the skill set. I think you're a candidate. I want to see a video.
I need to get a backpack, waterproof backpack, stuff it in.
Yeah.
And I think so. The last thing I had was I borrowed an Ozone version 1, and so it's connected between. You couldn't lock it off between the strut and the main frame.
Yeah.
Whereas the Armstrong's 2 separate ones. So
you're on there.
At least then I can deflate and just keep the middle one up and hold it.
Yeah.
But it's heavy. Like it's going to be wet.
No, well, it won't be that wet, because if you wing out and you don't come down, obviously, and if you deflate, so what happens when you deflate? This is something I probably haven't explained well enough. When you deflate, you don't need to wrap it up perfectly. Like anyone can deflate a wing. Yeah. And if you have skills that you can foil downwind and read bumps, when you deflate, it'll actually make the downwind part easier because the wing's no longer in the way.
Yeah.
And what I tend to do is I just lift up above my head while it's in that in-between stage. But once the air's out of that leading strut or the leading edge, then you literally just grab the strut and you kind of lift it up and grab it, and then you kind of have it under your arm, and it's like I have it like a rugby ball, you just going along downwind. And obviously the smaller if you ideally I prefer using my 3-4 than my 5-4. But if the wind's only strong enough for a 5-4, then I'm using the 5-4, and it's all good.
I suppose the only thing is coming from someone who's not super downwind experienced, I got to keep my eyes on those bumps. I don't know what's coming. I'm not confident enough to just but I can't look over here and work on a wing. And
but you'd be able to focus on downwinding. And I guess my tip is practice deflating. It's not that hard. It's everyone can deflate a wing. Next time you deflate it on the beach, just practice deflate, have it winging, like sort of free winging, deflate it. And then lift it up above your head, and then just grab it under your arm. And it's a skill that everyone's people freak out, you're on a foil, this, that, the other. It's but try it. And I reckon you'll probably get it. If your foil skills are up to scratch, you'll probably get it.
Yeah. But, for sure. All right, we got to give it a go. There's only one way to find out.
Only one way to find out, and definitely bring a pump in case. But we'll have to try to get you. You're not that far away. I have to try to get you a CO2 canister, and then that way, that thing's.
I've got the soda stream here. I'll go get I got to work out all the little connections. And,
I'll put you in contact with Grant Perry, and he'll he'll talk you through it, I'm sure.
For sure.
Yeah, and then challenge. I've challenged you to the deflate downwinder. Not many people have taken it up, but I feel like I got a good feeling about you, Oskar. I reckon you might do it.
We're on. Let's do it.
Next time there's wind and you don't have a shuttle, wing upwind for go for 1 or 2 Ks upwind, and then just deflate. Do like a little 10-minute downwinder, and it's you can do it all in half an hour kind of thing. Pump up, out you go, come back.
You can ride a smaller board. I like the sound of that.
You can ride your prone. If it's windy enough. Yeah. There's a few advantages, and you don't have to. You could probably use 725 without even having to worry about getting going.
Yeah. Well, I've got no chance of paddling enough at the moment, so this might be my only way to get it on.
That's originally why I started doing them. So I'm I want to use this small foil, but I'm not sure it's possible to paddle up. So the deflate was the answer. And then now 3 tips for those listening, learning to downwind. I think I can probably give you your first one because you said it earlier, is keep paddling to get onto that bump. That Zane said, don't give up
Don't
Yeah.
stop paddling.
Yeah, that's a good one. But then I need 2 others from you.
2 other tips. The biggest thing for me was that bump. Wait till you feel a bump push you. It's the one behind you one. That's not the one you want. Don't look behind you. Just look forward. Wait for that bump to
Yeah,
feel
actually,
it.
on that, you can actually feel it for sure, but you can sometimes see like the back of the bump. So if this is the bump, you'll sort of see it pulling away from you, and you want to see that peak actually get space between the peak and your nose. So you've got room to drop down. Whereas if you follow that peak, you're always going to be uphill. Get the peak away from you and drop down into it, and you're going to be able to, I guess, glide better.
Yeah.
More longer downhill.
Absolutely, yeah. And thirdly, God, there's so many tips, mate. Just watch. My third tip is watch this podcast. Go back and watch every one of these.
There you go. That's the best tip I've heard all bloody 6 months since I've been doing this.
Oh, mate, that's it. Like that's everything that I learned about downwinding from this. I was just like, someone, Jeremy Riggs said, do this. Austin Kalama said, do this. Zane said, and it's just like, you pick up all these little bits, and it's like, there's a lot of shit talk in there as well. Like, it's got to be interesting, but you pick up those little things, and that's what makes a difference. So, for me, it was spend the time to learn the muscle memories of things. Like, there's so many different stages to actually getting up on foil and stuff. So, like I said earlier, learn to paddle straight. Get that as a muscle memory of how you paddle straight. Then get the balance, be able to put power down, and learn how you transition your weight when you catch your weight. Like, all those steps, like learn the muscle memory, and once you feel comfortable with that, then you're ready to downwind. But there's so many little steps, and don't skip them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. That's like Matt Costa, for example. It's like, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And if you're buying, he had a 5'8" by 28 wide board. He was using a lift, and the boxes were probably not far forward enough. And he had never supped before, and he went out to try and downwind. And he's like, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Don't skip the foundation steps, because it will be the hardest thing you'll ever do if you skip some of those steps. And it's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on. I've chatted to you a little bit on Instagram, but it's good to chat to you more in depth, and we'll definitely have to catch up for a session soon. But
man, let's play some big runs. Let's send it.
Yeah, let's send it. That's it.
That's it. Awesome, man. No, I appreciate you reaching out. It's awesome to just dive into all this stuff. Starts to get your mind ticking over. The more you listen to this stuff, the more you talk to people, you just learn. That's foiling. It's learning. Keep learning. That's all it's about.
Foil brain to keep the froth going, and I love it.
Yeah, keep frothing.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, mate.
All right. Thanks, dude.